I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is and what it isn't, and then we're going to talk about how God delivers you from it, if you want him to. Anybody want him to? Good, because he loves to help his kids. I wanted to start with a reading out of this book that we got for sale for 80% off, or 80%, 20% off. Detachment. I read this just the other day. That's why we're talking about it today. One day, my son brought a gerbil home to live with us. Let's set the boundaries first. We take it way too seriously. It is everything. We take everything way too seriously. We are kids of Christ. We are God who made everything's firstborn. He loves us like we're the firstborn kid. We have an inheritance, we have his joy, we look like him, we sound like him, we walk like him, and we talk like him, and that's what he wanted. And we forget that when we get up underneath some of our addictions, some of our pain, the agony, some of the choices people have made around us, some of the choices we've made, and we forget that we can have joy, we forget that we can be lighthearted, we can run around this world like Kennedy does. And if we learn how to do that, we'll be more blessed than we could ever possibly imagine. You've watched Kennedy, you've seen it. So this story is a little ooky, that's why I chose it. Take it with a grain of gerbil. One day my son brought a gerbil home to live with us. We put it in a cage. Sometime later, the gerbil escaped. For the next 6 months, the animal ran frightened and wild through the house. So did we, chasing it. There it is, get it, we'd scream. Each time someone spotted the gerbil, I or my son would throw down whatever we were working on, race across the house and lunge at the animal, hoping to catch it. I worried about it, even when it didn't see it. This isn't right, I think. I can't have a gerbil running loose in the house. You know what it's doing behind the fridge. We've got to catch it. We've got to do something. A small animal the size of a mouse had the entire household in a tizzy. One day while sitting in the living room, I watched the animal scurry across the hallway. In a frenzy, I started to lunge at it as I usually did, and then I stopped myself. Nope, I said, I'm all done. If that animal wants to live in the nooks and crannies of this house, I'm going to let it. I'm done worrying about it. I'm done chasing it. It's an irregular circumstance, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. I let the gerbil run past without reacting. I felt slightly uncomfortable with my new reaction, not reacting, but I stuck to it anyway. I got more comfortable with my new reaction, not reacting. Before long, I became downright peaceful with the situation. I had stopped fighting the gerbil. One afternoon, only weeks after I started practicing my new attitude, the gerbil ran by me, as it had so many times, and I barely glanced at it. The animal stopped in its tracks, turned around, and looked at me. I started to lunge at it, and it started to run away, and then I relaxed. Fine, I said, do what you want, and I meant it. An hour later, the gerbil came and stood by me and waited. I gently picked it up and placed it in its cage, where it has lived happily ever since. The moral of the story, don't lunge at the gerbil. He's already frightened, and chasing him just scares him more and makes us crazy. Detachment works. So it's still hard to see what detachment is, but as we talk about it tonight, I know that you'll get a better understanding of what it is, and you'll want it just as much as that gerbil wanted those people to have it. Reacting by not reacting. So if you got a problem with your spouse reacting by not reacting. Codependency, I looked up a definition, excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner. They like the word partner. I just think it's anybody that's close to you. Typically one who requires, or we think they do, support on account of illness or addiction. And I don't think you got to be ill or addicted to have somebody be codependent on you. I'm codependent on a lot of people, depending on where I am centered, how I feel turned over to God at the moment. As with most things, there is a balance here to detachment. Completely detached would be to cut off from the truth, from relationships, and even from love. So we don't want to be completely detached, like a toaster that isn't plugged in. It's not nothing, right? It's a bludgeon now. It's not a toaster at all. So not detached enough, or codependency. causes us to fail to make decisions unless we're totally sure how it might affect the ones we're codependent to. So imagine that you are a conjoined twin. And you have two heads, you have two brains, but you only have two shoulders, two necks that come together in a V, and then you have one body. Every time you had to go to the bathroom, your twin's got to go with you. Every time you drink too much and vomit, your twin's going to go there with you. Your twin wouldn't have any say-so. That's kind of what codependency is. Every time you think you got to make a decision, you got to worry about the person right beside you, or your wife, or your husband, or your conjoined twin, or your coworker, or your kids. When you can't say yes, when you can't say no, when you don't know what to do, and you freak out, they get harmed too. And when we're in codependency, we're so worried about what the other person thinks that we sell ourselves, trying to buy them happiness so that we can feel good about who we are because they feel good about what we've said or what we've done or what we thought. So I'm going to look up, I have a really good list here. Looked up signs of unhealthy attachment. Unhealthy attachment, excessive jealousy. So maybe a little bit's okay, right? Maybe some of it's deserved, right? You know. Fear of intimacy. Constant reassurance, the need for constant reassurance. Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure? These pants don't look stupid? Do I have a booger in my nose? Is my zipper up? Well, yes, hopefully your zipper's up. Constantly seeking approval. You find yourself doing that in a relationship? Checking all the time? You drive people crazy sometimes asking so many questions. Am I okay with you? Are you okay with me? What's wrong? Are your underwear too tight? Your face looks awful. Emotional dependence. It's okay to be interdependent, but if you're dependent upon somebody else for your emotions, you're in a bad spot. Especially if their underwear's too tight. Instant relationships. Instant relationships. Who does that? Nobody with anybody wisdom. Who hasn't done that? Huge. Lack of boundaries. Not prioritizing yourself. Dependence on communication. Avoiding being alone. Fear of abandonment. Low self-esteem. The happily ever after myth. It says if something goes wrong in your marriage, it's a complete failure. There's a whole bunch of others, but that's enough of the negatives. The signs of a healthy attachment. Close and connected to that person. Comfortable with being vulnerable, open, and trusting towards that person. You are able to rely on that person to be responsive and available to your needs. Confident in your ability of self-expression within the relationship. Secure in the relationship. And if I'd had all those in the first marriage, I wouldn't be married to her. So I'm really glad I didn't have those in the first marriage. Because I wasn't a real great picker when I was back in my drinking days. Were you? Anybody good pickers when they were back here? Not a one? Wow, that's amazing. Maybe drunkards aren't good pickers. Warning signs of codependency. You do things for your partner that they should be doing for themselves. You give in, but feel angry about it. You tend to date people with issues. You take responsibility for your partner's behavior and actions, or failure to act or behave. You talk about their issues all the time. Their mood affects your day. You often want to know what they're doing, thinking, and where they are. You put their needs before your own. You have trouble identifying your own feelings. You don't do anything without checking with them first. You have trouble saying no to them. You keep quiet to avoid arguments. You cancel plans to accommodate your partner. You're always trying to be upbeat even when you don't feel like it. And you feel anxious in your relationship a lot. Here's a good question for you. Why is it that we want to make life all about us? Unless it's time for blaming, taking responsibility, or accepting change. We want to make it about us all the time, unless something goes wrong, and then we want it to be out there. And when we find out that what God wants to do in us is us to recognize and accept responsibility for where we've stepped out of line, then he can begin to actually heal that. But until we agree with him that we've stepped out of line, until we agree with him that we're been irresponsible or codependent or sinned or whatever, he can't help us. Until you know that your car isn't running, you don't take it to the mechanic. You just keep driving by. I use that because I've got a mechanic sitting right here. Love is the aim. Love is his aim, and it always has been, and it always will be. And we can't see it because we don't know what love looks like. You ever been fishing and it took you half a tackle box to get a bite? We're doing that with love. When you really don't know what the fish are biting on, and you're using everything in your tackle box, and you're trying to catch a good woman or a good man, and you're using all the wrong bait, you're going to get the wrong things, and you don't get love. You don't catch a fish. You don't get what God intended. You get what you thought you wanted, and it doesn't turn out to be what you needed at all. And I did that and did that and did that and did that and did that. And when I was doing the steps for the first time, it came clear, and I saw that through my fourth step, and I was just looking at it going, wow, I did this. I think everybody else did it. I was the one doing it because of my neediness, because of my fear, because of my shame, because of my anger. Love is the aim, and love is the antidote of everything that we feel that isn't right. To be loved, to feel it, to allow it, to stop just wanting it and allow it in. That's what we're here for. That's why recovery works, because that's exactly what he does. He empties us out of all the stuff that get in the way so that we have room to receive love. And then we're so afraid that if we do it again, whatever it was, that we'll get the same results. But when you really truly let love in, it doesn't act like that. You finally meet people that don't want to take something from you. You finally meet somebody who wants to add to your life instead of subtract from it. And I'm not talking about 24/7. Nobody's like that. We all got emotions, right? We all get our wrong panties on some days. But for the most part, what we're doing in here is recognizing, I want to walk this different way. And the only way to do that is to receive it as a gift from God. He's the only one that carries this. He's the only one that knows it. He's the only one that wrote it down and told us that it could be possible, and then sent his son to prove that it works. And no matter what happens, love doesn't die. It doesn't get worse. It gets better and better and better, no matter what happens on this planet. And we're talking God's love here, not the new hottie in your gym class. I don't know why I wrote that, but I had to say it. So what do we do about this? Step one, we're powerless. It's always going to be, step one's always going to be you're powerless. You're powerless over the way you felt. You're powerless over what's happened to you. You're powerless over what you saw your folks do and you thought that was love. You're powerless over what your first boyfriend or first girlfriend told you was love. You're powerless over what your brother told you when he told you a joke and it sounded like it might be love and it wasn't. We're powerless over all those things, what we believed to be true, what we were hoping to be true, what we tried, what we failed at. When we're powerless over things that don't hurt us, we love it. Try living without gravity. Try living without love. Air, the passage of time. When it's good, we get used to it and then we demand it. And when it's bad, we focus on it. We think God's got to change it, and we blame him for it. Sometimes we just freeze up and run away, or we blame God or others, or we medicate. Step one has the power to stop the bleeding and hold up a mirror. It's the first time that anybody ever came to me without telling me I had to change. When I went to AA, they were holding up the mirror in front of themselves and they were talking about what they'd seen. And for the first time in my life, I leaned over to see what it was they were doing. Because when somebody comes at me and says, you got to look in this mirror, I got resentful, angry, ashamed, ran away. I either avoided it or blamed you for it. I never took responsibility for myself. I didn't know that that was going to set me free. I thought that would make me guilty. So I was believing a lie, right? Step 2 introduces the fact. I'm in. Going to change? God's in. Do I want him in? I have to decide. I don't have to decide completely, right? We're fickle. We're emotional. We're crazy. We got a whole bunch of brokenness, but we got to at least have a crack of willingness to let God in. We got to at least have a crack of belief that I can't do it myself. I can't change enough to keep a woman at home. I tried with the best codependency I had. I tried to keep people in relationship with me, and I blew it, and blew it, and blew it. I need an outside force more powerful than my desire to fix myself with that crap on my first step list. And I was constantly trying to fix myself with the stuff that I actually wrote on the first step list and I was powerless over. I have to get over the notion that I'm going to be using this to fix this. That has to be at least doubtful. I don't have to be completely committed that my brain will never be able to heal myself, but at least I have to have a doubt so that God can step in. It's the first time I ever heard of doubt working for us instead of against us, but it does, because I got to doubt myself. And when I begin to let him in and stuff starts getting better, faith grows. And when faith grows, trust grows. And when trust grows, we stand on God. And when we stand on him, he doesn't move. And faith grows again. And that you guys are recipients of that. I'm watching people change as they come to these meetings, as they get sponsors, work on the steps, tell the truth on themselves, and stay out of relationships until the frying pan stops flying. Step 3 starts the love walk. That's what I was just talking about. It takes a while, because all the brokenness has to go away. It's almost like it always has to be etched away with this ball of fear that I gotta provide, I gotta be good enough, I gotta prove it, I gotta be good enough to attract the right person, I gotta be great with finances, I gotta hold it all together, I gotta be solid emotionally, I gotta be financially stable, I gotta be strong enough, I gotta be kind enough, I gotta be, oh my gosh, does your head chewed on you like mine did on me when I came in? It was constantly telling me things I had to have and I didn't have and I wasn't good enough for. They called it the shitty committee where I grew up, but I don't say that thing anymore. So, but that's what it was. God wants to step in and do this for us. He wants to be my provider. He wants to be my daddy. He wants to be my rich uncle. He wants to be my hope. He wants to be my justification, sanctification. He wants to be everything that I've ever wanted. And I can't let him, because I got to prove it to the world that I'm good enough. And all I've ever done with that is prove that it's not true. That's why we talk about the first 3 steps so much. If you can get to a place in your recovery where that starts to happen automatically whenever your emotions come up, you can take a look at yourself. Okay, why are my emotions coming up? And do I want to do that thing that I do when my emotions come up again? Have you ever thrown a 24-inch crescent wrench 75 feet and hit a concrete wall? You know how big they are and how much they weigh? They're like $275. And they wouldn't leave me alone. And so I was justified, I was sure. And if anybody had gone to the boss and told him that I flicked a 24-inch crescent wrench across the shop, it would have been my last day there. And I thought that they didn't do it because I would throw another 24-inch crescent wrench. But they did it because they knew I was broken. They didn't tell on me because they knew I was broken. Maybe they had some codependency going on. God will help you just like that. He'll smooth over your wrench flying. He'll smooth over your choices in mates. He'll smooth over your financial decisions. He'll smooth over everything. And as he gets the ground all smooth and ready, he begins to plant it. And then somebody comes along and waters it, and the sun shines, and pretty soon you have a garden. And you can't take credit for it because it isn't really yours. You're part of the garden. But you can give it away, and you'll grow more. And that's what he wants us to know, that he will fill us, but we have to jump in the river and become part of it. You can't sit on the side and sell it and get rich on what you know about God. You jump in and you find out you've already been rich. He'll do that for us if we let him. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.